He was not one of the 12, but his words have carried Christ to every corner of the world. He walked with Peter, wrote the earliest gospel, and preached in Egypt. In the end, the idolaters of Alexandria dragged him through the streets until his body broke. His name was Mark. His pen gave Mark's early life. Mark, also called John Mark, was born of Jewish parents from the tribe of Levi. His mother Mary owned a house in Jerusalem that became a gathering place for believers. Acts 12:12. Some believe it was in this home that the disciples gathered after Christ's resurrection. Though not one of the 12, Mark was closely connected. Tradition holds he was a young man present at Jesus' arrest, fleeing from Gethsemane when seized, Mark 14:51-52. That brief, almost hidden story may be Mark's personal signature in his gospel. Mark's conversion and mentorship. Mark is said to have been converted through Peter's ministry. Peter called him "my son," 1 Peter 5:13, and Mark later served as Peter's interpreter and companion. His gospel is often called Peter's gospel, capturing the apostles' vivid memories of Christ. Mark also traveled with Paul and Barnabas on their missionary journeys. Though he faltered early, deserting them in Pamphylia, later he was restored. Paul himself, near the end of his life, asked Timothy, "Bring Mark with you, for he is useful to me for ministry." 2 Tim 4:11. Grace had the final word. The Gospel, according to Mark. Mark wrote his Gospel in Greek, likely in Rome under Peter's guidance. It is the shortest Gospel, fast-moving and vivid, filled with words like "immediately." It emphasizes Christ as the suffering servant, full of action and power, leading swiftly to the cross. Matthew wrote for Jews, Luke for Greeks, John for the Church Universal, but Mark wrote with urgency, for all who needed to know that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. His gospel gave the church its first written account of the Lord's life, shaping Christian preaching for centuries. And attentive early believers' warm, intimate interior. Mission in Egypt. Tradition says Mark carried the gospel to Egypt, founding the church in Alexandria. In a land dominated by philosophy, science, and idolatry, he proclaimed Christ crucified and risen. The Alexandrian church became one of the great centers of early Christianity, producing leaders like Clement and Athanasius. Mark's witness planted seeds that bore fruit for generations. Martyrdom in Alexandria. Yet Mark's ministry ended in blood. During the great festival of Serapis, the pagan idol of Alexandria, Mark's preaching provoked rage. A mob seized him, tied ropes around his body and dragged him through the streets over sharp stones. His flesh was torn, his bones broken. They threw him in prison, and the next day, the torture resumed. Dragged until he was lifeless, Mark ended his race under the merciless hands of idolaters. Around AD 68, he joined the great cloud of witnesses. The law of men treated him as a disturber of peace. Grace crowned him as the evangelist who gave us the first gospel. Law and grace in Mark's story. Law. Mark began as weak, deserting Paul, and ended condemned by pagan mobs. Rome's law had no mercy for disturbers of idol worship. Grace. Christ restored his weakness, making him useful again. Grace turned a young deserter into the writer of the gospel. Grace planted him in Alexandria, where even death could not silence his witness. Devotional Reflection. Mark teaches us that God uses the weak. He failed, but was restored. He ran, but later stood firm. He reminds us that grace rewrites our story. Mark also teaches us the urgency of the gospel. His gospel moves quickly because the kingdom of God is at hand. Life is short, eternity is near, the message must be preached. Finally, Mark teaches us that discipleship costs everything. The pen that wrote the gospel was followed by a life given for the gospel. In soft, natural light. Mark's story asks us, do we believe God can use our failures? Do we live with urgency, sharing Christ now? Do we stand ready to give our all, even our lives, for the truth of the gospel? Pray today, Lord, take my weakness and use it for your strength. Restore my failures by your grace. Let me live with urgency, write the gospel in my life, and be faithful even to the end. And remember, the same Christ who restored Mark, who inspired his pen, and who sustained him in martyrdom, is the Christ who lives in you. Be faithful, be bold, be urgent, and let your life tell his story.